Could you imagine buying a car that burns oil, leaks oil, engine breaks because of timing belts, the car rusts, and as well your service manager has enough money now to buy a Ferrari? Or that piece of junk is just starting to rust away like it's going out of style? I'm here to share a list of 5 junk cars that you really shouldn't buy because they won't last. Let's get into it now.
Life's too short to drive boring cars.
The first one on my list is this white piece of junk parked right behind me. Why is it so crappy? Well, look, it's parked next to the tires, and then we have a Hyundai next to it that's falling apart, and then, of course, it's how fitting to have this great vehicle right beside it. Before I dive into the details, let's take a look. Cosmetically, this is a horrifying vehicle as well, but we'll get into the mechanical issues. Let's look. I mean, look at this thing. Very basic, small, petite, not particularly well made. We got lots of plastic all over the place. This is plastic fantastic throughout. Small, cheap style handles. Very basic set of rear tail lights on this rig. Of course, you got these roof racks, which is great for taking that mouse-infested couch to the dumpster. Of course, yeah, okay, great. We got a set of great looking wheels on there. But what about the inside? Also, Tupperware and Glad garbage bag got together and had a love child. This is literally what you'd have. So what is this junk? Well, we're talking about a Jeep Patriot. That's right. The worst year is a 2015. But trust me when I say these are all junk. You definitely don't want to have one of these. They're going to cause you nothing but heartburn, heartache, and you're literally going to have a stroke over the repairs and the failure rates of these particular junky vehicles. Nothing from the Jeep and Dodge Chrysler product lineup is particularly well made. These ones definitely stand out as particular junk. But let's talk about some of the main issues that you can actually experience. Some of them is actually leaks. You can get water leaks, of course. Right here, we have a sunroof. You can get water that leaks in through there, of course, as well. Leaks through here. Look at that high quality piece of finish right there. Of course, the doors can let water in. And these essentially can be converted into a hot tub because they leak like a sieve. So there can be a collection of water that gets in there. And that, of course, causes lots of problems with electrics. Garbage. Now also, particularly for the 2015 model year and certain years, they actually have a stalling issue. You're driving along, la-di-da, minding your own business, taking it easy, chilling like a villain, and also, and the vehicle stalls and dies right in the middle of the road. Even worse, could you imagine having to make a left-hand turn in busy traffic here if you're in North America, and you can't get around the intersection because the car stalls in the middle of your travel? That could be detrimental, absolutely. But a stalling issue with no check engine lights is even worse because it stalls and you don't even know why it stalled. Most vehicles today at least spit out a CEL so you know where the problem sort of stems from. But at least here you couldn't even figure that out. Another typical issue that you're finding with a lot of Jeep products, I mentioned a lot about this with the Wranglers and specifically some of the other Jeep products, and it's called a TIPM. This is the totally integrated poop module, essentially. Well, pardon the acronym, but that's the way I see it. Anyway, what it is a general brain. It's the module where all your sensors and other modules all come into the main brain. Well, it's very common for the TIPM to fail. When it does, you're going to have issues with lights not working, or they come, they go. Maybe your tachometer and your gauges start working, stop working. Things just randomly, just ghosty, stop working. That's trash. That's called your TIPM, and that's typical for a lot of Jeep products. So that is going to be a major issue. But there's bigger problems, if you can believe it. These vehicles could be outfitted with a couple of different transmissions. One, you could get a manual gearbox, and that one, a lot of people would comment shifting into third gear or shifting in general would result in a lot of grinding noises. Crunchy, grindy sounds, clearly not a well-built unit. But even more problematic is the CVT transmission that you can get in this. That's the continuously variable transmission that you normally find in most of these vehicles. And sadly, with relatively short miles on them, 60, 70,000 miles, you're starting to find a lot of the CVTs actually starting to overheat. They start cooking and boiling, and then they just fail. They make a lot of noises, grinding, whistling, whining noises, and not too much like some of our federal leaders. They make a lot of weird noises that we just can't get past. You can't get that noise out of here. But what we have is a transmission that starts making noises. That CVT is a problem. When it fails, because it's not if, it's when it fails, you're looking for a repair of about $3,900, $4,200 in that range. And the worst part is, on a good day, a car like this, after it's 3 or 4 years old, it's only worth that to begin with. So could you imagine having a car that's worth $5,000 and having to pour a $4,000 transmission repair on there? Garbage. They won't last, guaranteed to fail, and you just don't want them. Well, today it's all about inclusion, and I wouldn't want to leave this finy, feisty little car out here, and we're looking at this black BMW. Which one? Well, let's take a quick look first and try to understand why people are even buying these in the first place. Let's take a look. Right here we have the big kidney-style grills. It is a BMW. That's pretty standard fare, and that's why people get all hot and bothered about this car. Here we got LEDs. Of course, oh, how pretty, right? And down here, they always have all the gloss and glimmer, make you feel like you're driving something special like a BMW. This one is an X-Drive 28i. Look, soft touch handles. You gotta love that. How about all that glass on top? Well, probably I would anticipate that we're talking about a failure point at some point. Of course, you have all this beautiful chrome along the edge here, and a roof rack to haul all that raw concrete that you just broke up your driveway when you replaced it. And the interiors are also very, very pretty on them and wear particularly well, but that's not the issue. Of course, down here we have, oh, what a cute little rocker panel. It is a pretty car for sure, no doubt about it, even with these LEDs on the taillights. And you've got dual exhaust there. We're dealing with a BMW X1. That's right. And this one's a little bit newer, but it's the 2012 to 2015 that you really want to avoid if you can help it. And as I mentioned, we're talking about the 28i, so we're talking about the 2-liter turbo engine. But more specifically, in those generations, we're talking about the N20 engine, which is a 4-cylinder turbo. Yeah, it sounds all wonderful and great. It's great when it drives new. It performs well. It's great on fuel. But there's a critical error with that engine. And we won't even talk about all the other problems that BMW typically suffers from. Electric water pumps that fail, thermostats that fail, leaky oil filter housing gaskets. We have pan gaskets that leak, valve cover gaskets that leak, lots of oil and coolant leaks. We won't even forget about all the quick connect coolant lines that start to leak because they're plastic and they start to split and weep antifreeze all over the place. It just means that every hose is $150, $200, $300, and even more importantly, a lot of them are difficult to access, so it costs you lots of money at the maintenance shop to get that fixed once you hit about 80,000 miles. But the real problem is the class action lawsuit tied to the N20 engine because there is a timing chain. The primary chain tends to break. When it breaks, well, you have piston and valve connection, and it's catastrophic. Boom! And you know what a brand new BMW engine costs? It's a lot. You can anticipate at least $10,000 if your engine goes and you didn't get protected by that class action lawsuit. Lots of potential problems here. And as well, because it's a BMW, it's going to depreciate like the wind, and that just hurts your cause. You can be putting money into this money pit endlessly just to keep it alive. And the next one is this beautiful car right here. Now, I know it pains me to say this because, as you can see, this is a Lexus, and generally speaking, Lexus cars are ruthlessly reliable. But there's an exception, and this one had an exception. In 2020, there is a reason why you probably wouldn't want to buy the 2020 version of this particular model. But let's take a look around and talk about some of the attributes why people are buying these. Beautiful Lexus wheels. I love that chrome look. It's absolutely gorgeous. Of course, right here you have this beautiful chrome and all that trim that goes around the windows. Absolutely gorgeous. Small sunroof. Yeah, it works. LC500 style mirrors. I love that design. Of course, here we have LEDs on the front end, and of course it's that big behemoth of a grille, but that's not why you shouldn't buy these, and that has nothing to do with reliability. I mean, generally speaking, most Lexus vehicles will run for 500,000 miles. You also have some great texturing right there, and of course you get all these accents on the hood. Just gives the car an overall sporty look to it. Absolutely gorgeous in many ways. How about inside? Yet again, you really can't go wrong with a Lexus. The quality of the interior is second to none. So then what's the problem? Well, let's look around here and I'll show you. Of course, you have LED taillights right there and all that beautiful chrome on the bottom. But the problem isn't that, it's this. It's the ES300H. And the sad reality is, with that particular generation, there was hundreds of vehicles that were recalled because of engine porosity issues. What does that mean? Well, in the casting, in the factory, the casting of that engine block, there was bubbles, there was flaws in there. And allegedly, what you could have is coolant leaking through there, spilling through there, and starting to ignite a fire. Now, Lexus owned up and said, yes, we'll take care of that. It meant that a lot of these cars were actually getting full engine replacements, while the vast majority of them all had to go through a rigorous inspection just to make sure that there were no problems. Of course, there was a series and generations specific that there was even more of them, but clearly it was something that Lexus had to manage and take care of. Now, the beautiful thing is, of course, Toyota and Lexus, they don't sit on their laurels. They realized the problem and they nipped it in the bud. But the sad reality is that specific year of the ES300H is something you just want to stay away from. You don't want to risk leaks. You don't want to risk a fire. I don't. It's not a risk worth taking. And the even worse part, this does impact the Toyota Camrys as well as the Toyota Avalons of the same generation. That's where it really gets ugly in terms of numbers. But if I can offer up the recommendation, I would say go with the ES350. That's a naturally aspirated 3.5 liter V6. Absolutely bulletproof. That's the car to have. And the next little hot rod is this unit parked right behind me here. And considering it's built in Japan, you would think that it would be less problematic, but these definitely come with a lot of issues, specifically the 2012 to 2015 model years, even more so. But a lot of these in general have a lot of issues, specifically with the 2 and the 2.5 liter 4-cylinder engines that a lot of them come with. But let's get into some of the troubles. Some of these vehicles, of course, you have oil leaking out of the rear of the engine. Baffles, that was a bit of a fix for it, but again, costs you some money to get that sorted out. Of course, premature brake wear, right there, they just don't last all that long. Chatter on the manual gearbox cars. So the cars that are equipped with the gearboxes like we see down here, the old stick shift, often have issues related to chatter, especially when the gearbox is cold or the clutch is cold. Check engine lights for a variety of different reasons. Many different oil leaks that you're finding with a lot of these older Imprezzas. And while a lot of cars tend to leak oil, this one is particularly bad for that. But where the real big issues are with these 2 and the 2.5 liter engines is that the heavy oil consumption. As a matter of fact, there was a class action lawsuit to address some of those issues in the slightly older generations of the Subaru Imprezza. Now, of course, the latest generations also have the CVT transmission if you're going for the automatic, and those are chock full of issues as well if you're dealing with the continuously variable transmission. Lots of noise, lots of problems, lots of expense. Quite frankly, if you want something Japanese, I would stick more likely with a Toyota product. Now the next one on our list is a slightly older version of what we're looking at right here in gray. The reason I'm not showing you the actual year is because they're very hard to find nowadays. They don't last. But let's take a quick look around and then I'll explain exactly what the problems are. Now these cars generally won't last, particularly the 09s and up, because of a lot of issues. But people love the Audi because of the Quattro all-wheel drive system, they're legendary for the 4 rings, and again, Quattro. Of course, the later versions have the LEDs, but the older versions still look sharp too. They had their own trademark headlights. Audi, it looks very, very slick. Of course, you'd go down the run here, and you'll see they have these great lines up on the top. Of course, go around to the back, LEDs. This is a TFSI, of course. 1, 2 tailpipes, and very heavily carboned up, of course, in this A4. Now, the interiors are very, very plush, and literally some of the best in the business. And you do get the other amenities like sunroofs and all of the active safety features that you can possibly imagine in a modern day car. But the problem is there's a lot of issues with a lot of the 09s, 010s. For example, massive oil consumption to the point where you literally see it coming out of the tailpipe. Or the camshaft housing essentially leaking oil. We have carbon buildup because of the direct injected engine. That's a problem. We needs to be walnut blasted and cleaned every 60,000 miles. Oil leaks, coolant leaks. Of course, water pumps a big problem, and the intake manifolds are built in such a way that they're a pain and very expensive to change. Catalytic converters, very expensive, and they're known to go to, as does the high pressure fuel pump. And everybody knows how expensive high pressure fuel pumps can cost. $2,000 to $3,000, and the injectors themselves are also quite expensive. The suspension is a little fragile, and it's known to needing a rebuild at ridiculously low miles. And as well, there's check engine lights galore for different sensors such as the oxygen sensor, which is one that carbons up as well and prematurely fails. So it's a problematic car from gearbox to engine issues, oil consumption, and lots of electronics. It's a troublesome car, and because of the massive depreciation, likely most people will just figure out why keep pouring money down the money pit, send it to the dumpster. And with all of that said, right there, be sure to check that great video, 5 junk SUVs that won't last. Hope to see each and every one of you guys on the next one. We'll see you real soon. Catch you then. Bye-bye.